Welcome to The Patient Physician, a space for doctors to explore their physical, mental, and financial wellness. Your peers and industry leaders will destigmatize institutional perceptions while redefining success, money, and personal care. Get ready to pull back the curtain because here, you are both patient and physician.
Welcome to The Patient Physician. My name is Paul Smith, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Chris Fulbright.
Good morning, Paul. It's good seeing you again.
Yes, sir. I'm interested to hear not only the story of our next interviewee, but I'm also intrigued by the way that y'all met. Today, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Robert J. Wolf. He's a neuroradiologist, author, and historian, best known for his memoir, Not a Real Enemy, a poignant multi-generational saga about his family's escape from Nazi persecution and life in communist Hungary. He trained at the University of Michigan, Brown and Yale, and tours the U.S., Europe, and beyond, speaking to Jewish groups, history enthusiasts, and biography lovers. You can also find him at robertjwolfmd.com. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on, Rob, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I much appreciate it. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you.
So, Chris, I had mentioned we usually have prospective interviewees come in different ways to us, whether they're introduced, but you met on a cruise ship. Tell me how you guys even met up and excited to have this conversation, but tell me about what happened and how that came down.
Yeah, so Monique and I were on a cruise ship over in the Mediterranean, and we're going around to a different, on a ferry, actually headed back over to somewhere else. Rob was there and we started talking and he started sharing about this book and you could feel his enthusiasm and wanting to share the family story and this passion. And he went through it. And then like as a passing, he just mentions, oh, by the way, I'm a retired doctor and I moved from Michigan down to Florida, like as a passing of that. Right. Whereas the other people I met on the boat, like they led with that. I'm retired and I did this and this is what they did and stuff. And so I just kept getting drawn back into his enthusiasm of this book, an enthusiasm of sharing his family story. And so obviously our podcast, most of the people, Rob, that we visit with on here are tied to the medical community. You know, a little bit about our firm. We can talk about that later. But I was attracted to your pure passion and love of telling your family story. But if we kind of step back a little bit, since most of our listeners are in the medical community, do you mind sharing kind of your path in medicine and what you did, and then we'll kind of color in those lines, and then we'll transition over to your fantastic book.
I appreciate those kind words. I was very fortunate. You know, my parents were immigrants, from Hungary. They escaped after 1956, after the Hungarian Revolution, ended up in Detroit, where I was born. I was raised in suburban Michigan, K through 12. I was one of 3 Jewish kids in my whole class. There was 40% African American, but no feelings of prejudice, no feelings of racism. It was just a great place to grow up as a kid. I mean, we bullied each other and we trash talked and all of that, but we left it on the field. It wasn't like what's going on now, unfortunately. But lucky enough to go to Tufts University near Boston for college. And then, like you said, University of Michigan for medical school. Very, very excited when I got in. And from then on, it was sweat. I mean, even in college, I did a year internship in Framingham, Massachusetts, which is Boston University affiliate. Lucky enough to do my radiology residency at Brown University, and then my neuroradiology fellowship at Yale. So now I'm 30, and my indentured servitude is finally over. Although my first time on a partnership track, they start you off slow. 2 years to partnership, 3 years to partnership. Things that you learn as you go, as well as improving as a doctor, as a person, and as a radiologist. One of the things I always tell the kids, the med students and the residents, that there's no substitute for experience. And needless to say, I got bounced around a little bit. I ended up in Massachusetts for my first job, and I loved it. I thought that's where I was going to be for 20, 30 years, but contract negotiations didn't work out that way. So I ended up in Michigan and practiced for a while, 7, 8 years in Michigan. So now I'm in my 40s, late 30s, 40s. And that was the best 9, 10 years of my life, truthfully. It was a great job. I met great people. I was in my mom's home state. My dad had already passed away in 1997, unfortunately. I just love Michigan. I love the people. 4 major sports teams, lots of great music, concerts, limo rides, great friends. And so after that, at 43 years old, I was getting burnout from radiology for medicine, which you hear about all the time. I guess I got it earlier than most, but I went to part-time. No more night call, no more weekends, no more angiography, interventional radiology, which I didn't mind doing. You really help a lot of people with that, but I was only doing it for night call and weekends. So I wasn't doing enough cases during the year to really be that proficient at it. But I did it because that's what the job called for. And fortunately, never killed anybody. Thank God. I've had some heart-stopping moments in my career, like trying to code a patient in the office or at night when nobody's around. That's frightening. But we got through all that and nobody passed away. So lucky me. So for the next 20 years or so, or a little less, I was working outpatient part-time, mostly from home. That was out of Michigan. So I moved back to Massachusetts for my wife at the time. And because I promised her 10 years, we went back after 9 years on good behavior, I joked. But and then, she was good. She wanted to be with her parents. It was her turn. And unfortunately, her dad passed away and then my mom passed away. And that's what brought me to the book. But my career was interesting. I read thousands of MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, nuclear medicine scans, ultrasounds, upper GIs, baryomenemas, and then tons of biopsies, drainages, and all kinds of things. So you learn as you go. I learned something new from every job, learned something new from every doctor, patient, nurse, referring clinicians. And something else, it's another lesson for the kids, is you can learn something from every case. I remember sitting down my first day of residency as in radiology, and one of the attendings said to me that you can learn something from every professor, you can learn something from every attending physician. And it stuck with me, and he was right. Everybody had their own little nuances, but you take away those little pearls, and it's all part of the education. And besides sticking your head in a book, for 2, 3, 4 hours a night too, on top of all that. So it's a lot of sweat, but once you get used to it, once you get in that groove and you learn to enjoy your work, it doesn't seem like work. You're having fun, you're meeting people. Of course, you can't wait till lunchtime and to go home. But as long as the caseload was manageable, I enjoyed the day. But when it was overwhelming, it was definitely a cause for burnout. I just retired last year, too, for health reasons. And also, it was just time. 35 years in radiology, 44 when you consider internship, college, med school, et cetera. So it's a long time.
Rob, what was the main contributing factor? Was it the nights and call that was contributing to your burnout, or just the amount of time leading up to that point? There's people that we visit with that are not even out of training and are already burning out. So what was it for you that you just said, hey, I've got to make a change?
A combination of things. Most of the guys I worked with, guys and ladies, of course, that I worked with were hard workers, but I would cross into people, radiologists that didn't work as hard, that didn't pull their fair share, and you ended up pulling the load, because if you didn't get to go home. So you learned to be efficient and you learned to read faster. The interruptions during the day made it difficult too. The caseload, it was just, and then think about night call and weekends when you're sitting in a dark room all weekend, Saturday and Sunday, reading case after case. In the Michigan case, I had triple call. I had to go in and do all the cases for the ER, CAT scan, ICU, general cases. And then I did angio-interventional cases, so that was added on. And then I had to spend the afternoons in the MRI center doing the inpatients. But while I was waiting there, I would read the MRI cases that were sitting there to be read, so that it would decompress Monday a little bit. But a combination of things. It definitely wasn't the money. The money was always kind of there. But for the amount of work that I did, the amount I put in, you never recovered. In 35 years, I've always put in more than I ever got as compensation. And I think, there's taxes and insurances and all that other benefits, of course. But for the amount, just like, for example, in the Michigan job, I read MRIs 1 week out of 3. We had 3 groups that rotated through the MRI center. And there are actually 2 of them. Very, very, very busy. 24/7 imaging, 4 magnets. And it was crazy. I was reading up to 5,000 cases per year. And that actually paid my salary. We worked 3 weeks out of 4, which sounds pretty good, right? So the 4th week was vacation. So we got 12 weeks with vacation. And for most people, I say, wow, that's amazing. Believe me, we needed it. And so the other 2 weeks, one would be in the hospital work, and the other one would be in the office. And so I was working 2 weeks out of 3, essentially for free. But, the money was decent then, so we never complained. Nice bonuses, paid off the mortgage, saved and invested. And so that was the good part. But like my dad used to say, don't do it for the money. And he was right. He became an OBGYN, absolutely loved it. No signs of PTSD, no signs of burnout, and delivered like 10,000 babies in the Detroit area. That's the punchline in all of this too. And would have worked till the day he died. So I tried to emulate that enthusiasm as long as I could. But for me and others, in some cases, it wasn't possible. But I'm glad I went part-time because it just kept my interest going and a nice balance of life, family, work, and other interests as well.
So I was going to ask you about that in relationship to your family, because your father was a physician, his father was a physician. How much did that play and influence? We were talking about that just prior to the show with our producer Joe, and saying, how much does that contribute to your decision into going into medicine? And you mentioned he didn't seem to go through any kind of burnout. What was different? Because it sounded like he was working, doing a lot of deliveries.
A lot of deliveries, middle of the night, and he would get cranky the next day. I mean, if he was up all night doing deliveries, he would clean out the refrigerator and argue with my mom, and yell, scare the dog away because he'd be yelling so hard. And so I wouldn't call it burnout; I would just call that fatigue. But the next day, he would bounce back. I would say 100%. The greatest influence on my career decision was because of my mom and dad. Starting with 8th, 9th grade biology, and going with my dad on rounds when he would go through the ER. Everybody loved him. The janitor, the lady at the front desk, the nurses, the doctors. He smiled at everybody, said hello to everybody. I would wait in the physician's lounge, and they would take me to lunch. And then I started volunteering in an emergency room and nurse's aide and all kinds of things like that. I just loved it more and more. But my dad was the chief influence on me as far as that goes. And this is before I knew all that he had gone through in Hungary. I mean, this is not knowing that he was a 4-time escape artist, not knowing everything that he and my mom had to endure. So that was just, and so onward and upward. And one of my best friends, Rob Sawyer, they called us the Robert brothers. He also had the same influence. He became a transplant surgeon and just loved the way my dad's demeanor was. And you would never know everything that he'd gone through because of his jovial and jolly demeanor. And there it was. So a huge influence on me. By the way, my mom, she was 13 months away from graduating medical school when they left Hungary in 1956. She would have been an internist, and she actually never went back. Unfortunately, I used to tease her about that, saying, "Mom, why didn't you go back to school? We could have been so much wealthier with a dual income physician family." But I was lucky. I had a helicopter mom, a stay-at-home mom, and she made sure that I stayed out of trouble, as did my friends, in high school and college, et cetera. So
I think you're the first person that said I was lucky to have a helicopter mom. I don't know that I've heard any other child say that.
I didn't think so at the time, but Hebrew school, bar mitzvah, piano lessons, all kinds of things. The kids are outside playing, and I'm practicing piano, and I really want to be out there playing dodgeball or kickball or baseball, whatever it was for the day. And but I'm glad that you did. I learned music appreciation, learned the better part of another language, although I forgot most of it. And by the time I got to college, she kind of let go of the reins. But they still were curious about my grades, my academics, made sure that the money was well spent, tuition money, et cetera. And they were just interested in everything that happened to me while I was in med school, for sure, because the unique experience going to medical school in the United States versus Hungary, although my dad was very, very well regarded as an excellent surgeon and clinician, even though he was checked. And of course, foreign medical grads have to redo their residency, as my dad did in the Boston area, barely speaking English, but he made it through Beth Israel, of all places, in Boston, a Harvard affiliate, which I couldn't get into in any specialty. And it's amazing how he could do that. I finally got into Yale. It took me 30 years.
Yeah, so I heard your excitement about this. The schools, though, there was a poor person on the boat that walked by you with the big blue on their T-shirt, and you let them know that you were a Michigan grad very clearly. So you're a big blue fan for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, a big fan, and I love sports anyway. But I love Ohio State fans too. I mean, it's a chance to bond. I'll tell you. Well, Purdue is a great school. Big Ten, Illinois. I applied to all those places for residency for sure. First ophthalmology, actually. Another disappointment in my life was I didn't get into ophthalmology. I wanted to be a neuro-ophthalmologist, and very, very competitive. Radiology was competitive too, but it worked out for me, and I can't hold regrets.
I'm interested on something, and obviously anyone who's listening to this, we're going to have Dr. Wolf's links for his books and speaking and stuff with the podcast. I've read the book. Amazing book. I had to keep reminding myself that you're telling the story of your family, not just writing about things going through someone's life and as a teenager. But you said something a second ago, Rob, that I just thought back. Your mom was a helicopter mom, to use that term, but remembering in the book, it sounds a lot like what your grandmother was like for your dad. She was the one who was there. She was the one who exposed him to the arts. She was the one who took him to the park and protected him. She was the one when your grandfather came home of a tough day in the dentist office and the money was tight and trying to figure out how to move around. She was the one who was there for your dad. Do you think that was your mom's natural bent? I mean, she was going through nursing school. Like, obviously, hard charging. Her family was in medicine as well. Like those things and the courage it took for them to cross. Well, we'll get into the story. It just hit me though how you described your mom and how she treated your dad. It's so much like what your grandmother was for your dad.
Wow, what a great question. That's such an interesting question because A, nobody's ever brought that up. And B, you're absolutely right. I think you have an excellent memory. And yeah, my dad, something I didn't know about my dad is his father used to beat him if he was late coming home or if his academic performance was subpar. And his mom had tried to protect him from that. And so that was his. But my dad dearly loved his parents, and it was whatever it was, he still loved them. I mean, but he was fearful of his dad, and I think that contributed to my dad's toughness, his integrity, his intestinal fortitude, whatever you want to call it, that kind of discipline. Because my dad was a great student, and being Jewish, it took him forever to get into medical school, but he finally did after World War II because Hungary was very short of physicians. So, and that was with a 10% quota, the 10% Jewish quota. My mom got into medical school later. She was 11 years younger than my dad. And they met once when she was a child, and he didn't think much of her then. That's funny. But later on, when she was a student, and my dad, I was probably already out of his residency by then in Hungary, they fell in love and then got married. And a great chapter about their marriage, as you remember, in 1953 with Stalin and the KGB, and talk about cloak and dagger and what happened to my mom's uncle, of course. But what a great point. And unfortunately, my mom never knew my dad's parents because they perished in Auschwitz at 50 years old. So I think they would have gotten along. I wish I knew them, but that's a good point that I don't get to bring up. And something you just reminded me I like to say is, how do you put somebody's life into 400 pages or into 40,000 or 80,000 words? You can't. And the other thing is, lucky to be here. I mean, the only thing we control is ourselves. But what we don't realize is the people that our predecessors, how we got here, and how split-second timing in some cases made my dad survive or helped my dad to survive, and then lucky to be here because of all that. You just don't think about that kind of thing every day, for sure.
Well, let's transition, because you said it a little bit earlier. When your mom passed is when I think the book on the CD-ROM and the notes and the stuff started coming through. Can you tell us how the book came to be, how you transitioned from physician, and did you hear the stories from your parents? Did they talk to you about the running through the fields in the night and meeting the priest, and how much of that was shared with you verbally versus did you read it for the first time and say, oh my goodness, this is what mom and dad went through for me now to be in Michigan and going through this? Color that picture for us.
Really, the first half of my life, I didn't think much of any of it. I did read the manuscript once, and the history of the book is interesting. My dad and mom wrote his autobiography in the 70s. They wrote it as though the events happened the previous day. They were crisp, they were clear, they were sharp. The smells, the sounds, the way the table was set, listening to the radio, the fear, the cold. And so they went from paper and pencil to typewriter to computer to disc. And I read the manuscript once, probably when I was about 30, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I remember my dad's first escape. I remember my parents talking about his last escape, the one from Hungary ultimately, and the priest. But I remembered very little about the rest of it and didn't think much of it. And of course, busy with career, family, just the day-to-day activities. So flash forward to my dad passing in 97, unfortunately. Mom passes in 2016. A historian friend of the family, and now a permanent friend of mine, super nice lady, she hands me the disc. It's now on a disc and says, you've got to look at this. You've got to read this. And I didn't have time. I took a year to take care of my mom's affairs, another year to retire and try to enjoy life a little bit, because realizing how short it was. And then a friend of mine in Michigan, never burn your bridges, he asked me for help. They were short radiologists in Michigan, and I was already in Massachusetts and now down in Florida. But I was reading from home starting in 2018, Wednesdays and Thursdays. And that brought me to the book. I loaded so as a radiologist, we have two screens. The left screen is the patient queue, the list, and the right screen is the work, are the images. So between cases, I loaded up the disc, and the left screen was my dad's autobiography, and I dictated into a biography. And when I did it, I thought, oh my God, these stories are so amazing and so poignant and just and unbelievable. I mean, 20 miracles, 4 escapes. I could not believe everything that my dad had gone through. So I could not leave it on a computer disk. I couldn't leave it on a screen. So I ran with it, queried agents and publishers, and with little success, and literally about to self-publish on Amazon, which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I mean, a lot of people self-publish, and a lot of authors don't get the privilege of having a standard publisher like I did, which is another great miracle and story. But needless to say, 20 edits later, some beta readers looking at the book, and I ended up with my co-author, Janice Harper, who's a professional author, anthropologist, actually. She wrote about Madagascar. She wrote a book about getting your PhD, and she's a fellow Michigander. She's now in Washington State. But if it weren't for her and the great team that we had, it's another thing I love to teach the kids, is it's all about the team. You got to be a team player. The guy that did the book cover, my friend who's gone with this journey with me the whole time, with the website, teaching me about social media, and then we got the YouTube channel going. And the guy that did the book cover was from Croatia, ultimately, where we just were, which is so cool.
Yeah.
A little bit of an eccentric guy, but for the price, he was outstanding. He did a great job. And if it weren't for that team, we wouldn't even be here talking about this. The book has won 4 awards, and I'm not one to pat myself on the back or gloat, or I haven't even had time to have that soak in, I guess. But it does mean that the readers, the people that reviewed the books, understand the quality of the work and the importance of the work, and it's very gratifying. But it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't help in the fight against anti-Semitism. So there's that limitation with it too. But there it is. And then, so besides rewriting the book, Janice helped me query agents and publishers, and we got it down to about 12 or 15, and literally bottom of the ninth, shoestring catch, we got Amsterdam publishers, and we took it from there. And they're an outstanding. The Holocaust is their genre. That's what they do. And she's a Christian, so it's remarkable what she's doing. She was putting out about 3 books a month at one, which is amazing if you think about a small publishing company. And the thing that's different about our book is that it covers communist Hungary. It covers 2 wars, not just the Holocaust. It's an adventure, of course, my dad's biography, and the trials and tribulations of his parents and family. Yeah, it was an easy motivation once I read the story and started moving with it. My work on it really accelerated, and truthfully, I think it still is. I'm trying to slow down, but with everything going on in the world and the interest that's still out there, as long as people will help me fight hate and racism, I'm willing to keep doing all kinds, and also meeting great people like you guys. I mean, and Johanna, and it's a wonderful experience being able to talk about this, but it's also nice meeting people around the world, like you said earlier.
Did you come up with the title? I know where it's from. I'm not going to release. People need to read the book. The title, it's so interwoven into what you're describing, what we're going through in the world today, people's feelings, emotions, how you intertwine that to come up where it is found, how it is found in a disheveled room. I mean, I'll just let people figure that out as they read it. It will pop off the page, as it did for me. The detail of having the yellow star. You talked about changing one yellow star for a red star, the impact there. How did you come up with the title? I'm blown away the impact that it has in today's world.
Great question. I mean, my original title for the book was The Hungarian Papillon, The Hungarian Butterfly, Dad's Story. Well, my co-author said, well, Dad's Story, everybody can say Dad's Story. That's not going to really sell. Hungarian Papillon, after the great escape artist, Papillon, we've all seen the movie. I think they did a remake too, but the one I loved, and the story too, the book, was Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman from the 70s. Amazing story. I mean, my dad wasn't jumping off cliffs off of Devil's Island, but his escapes were pretty remarkable too in their own right. But the theme resonates throughout the story, as you know. My dad was not a real enemy. He was just a victim of this, that, and that because he was Jewish, as you know. The second title, comedically, was The Sixth Book of Moses. I thought because of all the miracles, my dad's name was Moshe ben Yosef, which is Moses, son of Joseph. And so the Sixth Book of Moses was another thought I had, but kind of humorously. But my co-author, she came up with the not a real enemy part, and she squelched that too. So Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom, is just that. The chapter is called Not a Real Enemy, like you said. And my dad's risk tolerance at this point, it's the night before his 4th and final escape. His risk tolerance is over the roof. And like you said, he snuck in to the medical staff office between security guards with rubble everywhere. And he found his dossier in case he got caught or arrested while trying to escape. He wanted to make sure he had a clean record with the communists, and they described him as not a real enemy. Whereas, as you know, my mom and dad really were, because they loved Mother Hungary, they loved a democratic Hungary, the culture, and if all those events didn't happen to them being Jewish, I probably would have been raised in Hungary, and again, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But my mom and dad were real enemies because they were leaving the next day, and Hungary was losing two good people, a doctor and somebody who was almost a doctor. By the way, my dad being an OBGYN during the Hungarian Revolution, which was 2 weeks long, maybe a little bit longer. Not a lot of people know about that war. I call the Ukraine War the Hungarian Revolution on steroids. I can't imagine Hungary destroyed like that, like Ukraine has been, and even Russia. But they were a real enemy because they lost two good people, whereas they would have been in the country. And my parents were smart enough to stay quiet. They hid when they had to. They didn't get political with their colleagues, even though they tried to get goaded into to talking about against communism or for communism, either way. And my parents would just not buy into it. So they actually were a real enemy. And yeah, that's a great chapter. That the luck on this guy, right? Like The Sopranos, the luck on this guy.
So your parents' survival story is truly remarkable, and I'm just curious how their experiences have influenced your own identity and life choices to this point.
Oh my God, I'm a clone, I guess. Now, if you knew me 6-7 years ago, you'd say this guy would never write about the Holocaust. He'd never be talking about it, because I was getting Holocaust burnout. As I mentioned earlier, the first half of my life, not so much. Second half, my mom talked more and more about it. Not a lot of people do that. She didn't have PTSD either. She just wanted to educate people about the horrors, the perils of communism, anti-Semitism, racism, and hatred. And so my mom and dad integrated well with the Jewish community, with the medical community, with the general community. Friends of all types around the world, interested in other cultures, interested in travel and education, art, museum, literature, the theater, music. And I got all that. Now, I might not like the same type of music that they do, or I'd rather go to a rock concert or jazz or fusion than opera, but still that exposure was there. So they taught me that there's more to life than food, shelter, and clothing. And I still try to preach that now. Whereas back in the day when my dad was escaping with no light at the end of the tunnel, food, shelter, and clothing was everything. And so it just made me the older I got, and especially after they passed away, unfortunately, maybe too late, but I guess it's never too late to do the right thing. I've learned to realize that how life was short, it's precious, it's fleeting, and to do something different, to change a little bit so that you're helping out the community, giving back. And I couldn't think of anybody who could have better parents and luckier. And if you don't have a good family, you've got nothing too. If you don't have love in the house, proper education, it's difficult. It's hard to get ahead when you don't have a good start like that.
I'm sitting here thinking about the way that you experienced their stories later on in your life. And you had shared earlier on that they didn't really talk about it much. Was there a shift for you when you started to learn all these things? And what was it like for them, like actually to have to share that with you? For a lot of people, they wouldn't even want to talk about it, relive those experiences. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, she shared with everybody. I mean, family. I just got burnout from it because I was hearing it all the time. Whenever I was with my mom, we couldn't go a day without her mentioning. She was talking about the Holocaust, and then we went to lunch, and then we talked about the Holocaust. And don't do it for the money. That was my dad, So, and we would not belong to the Nazi party, and we would not belong to the Communist Party. So I will not belong to any party here in the United States. We vote for the best candidate. So that was how my mom was.
No, that's a novel idea.
Yeah. Does that even exist?
Right.
I'm not real political. I do like the freedom of speech and the freedom to vote and the freedom of religion. And I guess that's my major point, is that we got to vote and we get to move around without handcuffs. But it was later in life that my mom talked more about it. And like I said, you never think that I would do this. I was a science and math, anatomy kind of guy. And now I'm a English major, history major, marketing major, all boiled up into one. And I never really liked history as a kid or English. So there were just things I had to go through. But now it's my new vector. It's my new interest. You can get burnt out from anything. And I hope I don't get burnt out from this, because I think it's an important subject to bring up and to relate. But yeah, it was discussed quite a bit later on in life, especially for 5 or 10 years. And PTSD is there. A lot of people, like you said, bottled up about their experiences in the Holocaust. We hear about it from Vietnam vets, Korea, which we never even talk about. We never mind World War I or the Civil War. But some people could talk about it, some people couldn't. Some people have books that they're just not willing to write. And I try to encourage people, if you have a book in you, if you have a story, write it. And then how about the non-survivors? The 50 to 60 million people that died in World War II, not to mention under communist rule. What if these people were a day away from being liberated or a week away and had a great story? So all those stories that just went with them to their mass graves, it's unthinkable. So I was lucky enough to have that privilege. And my parents wrote this as though they knew that I would read it and they knew that I would reproduce it. And damn it, don't you hate it when your parents are right? So they knew.
You talked a few times about, or at least introduced, that you're out there talking to a lot of audiences, diverse audiences, I would imagine. What's been the most profound reaction that you've had when you're speaking to a group or trying to educate them?
What a great question. I already said I met all these great people, but I always took away some kind of a feeling from every. This is my 107th podcast, by the way, and thank you again. 37 book presentations and 25 TV and radio interviews. Some of the great comments over the last few years was somebody in the Holocaust Museum in D.C., which I was fortunate enough to do two-day book signings there on two separate occasions. But one person came up to me and said, "Sorry for your losses." And I'm thinking, these are people that I lost that I never even met. My two grandparents and my mom's grandfather, a rabbi. Another real threat to society, dentists and rabbis perishing. But so she says to me, "Sorry for your losses." And that really touched me. Another person came up to me and said, "Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing." And I thought, boy, this is kind of natural to me, but I guess I'm doing some kind of a community service. So those were two examples. I was so cooked. I did a hometown library book presentation. And we sold out the place. I mean, we had a backlog. We had like 80 books there. We sold them all. People still wanted more, so we had to exchange addresses and mail more. And what a great Q&A that was. We closed the library, and then we had a cadre of people go next door and watch the Lions win over KC that night. It was a huge day. I was so tired by the end of the day. Somebody asked me, "Well, why are you doing all this?" And I just looked at the guy and just thought, I said, "I have absolutely no idea."
I'm curious, knowing your mom and dad's personality, what do you think they would think about all this attention for the book and the awards and people's just reading their story and seeing what they went through? I mean, you keep talking about these 4 escapes. Listeners, I'm telling you, listening to his dad and his buddy Frank count down on a walk and thinking through the phases of the moon and when the guards smoke a cigarette versus the wet ground and the snow. I'm read the book, but I'm just curious, knowing your dad's personality and your mom's personality, what would they think about their son, Dr. Wolf, who followed through with the family legacy of being a physician, traveling around, telling their story? What would they think about this?
Well, a lot of people told me that my parents would be proud of me. A lot of people say my parents are proud of me, if you believe in the afterlife, and they're sitting up on some cloud, sipping on a Bloody Mary under a parasol and meeting all their late friends and family. That's a fantasy, but some people think of heaven that way. So I would like to think that they were proud that I did it. One person on LinkedIn called me your father's messenger, and that was
oh, wow.
That was a really heartfelt. That was really heartwarming when I heard that. All the comments and reviews that I got from all the people, my parents, I think, would really, really be pleased with. And like I said, they probably did this thinking they knew I would do this anyway. And this is my baby. It's like you said, the legacy to the family. I'm an only child of only children. I do have step daughters and step grandkids, and 2 of them have already been to the Holocaust Museum, taking pictures, holding the book, telling the staff about me, yada, yada. And a couple months later, I'm there doing book signings, which is really cool. I'm going to do my mom again. Forgive my Hungarian accent. She would give me this Jewish guilt and say, "You couldn't do this while we were still alive." So that would be my mom saying that, and I get it. It's a regret that I didn't chase this earlier. But what are you going to do? I mean, you've got a life and you're busy, and I never thought of myself as a writer until 6-7 years ago. So I would hope that they would be pleased and proud and can keep carrying the message. And it's appropriate now. It's very appropriate. So.
If we can, I want to come back to something that you said with, one of the questions you got was, why are you doing this? And I guess were left perplexed and said, I really don't know. And I'm going to quote and come back to Mark Twain. He said, history doesn't repeat itself, but often rhymes. I think that without proper history, which is where we're supposed to be learning, not just learning about it. Oh, that's interesting to read, or that was a very moving story, but so that we learn what not to do and repeat those tragic things. And if it's buried, then we don't learn from those. And I think that what you're doing in that way and continuing to help bring back stories that, yes, they were a long time ago, but still we're seeing relevant even to today. And how, if we don't have those history lessons, that could we repeat in some way, in some level, the way that things happened before? It wouldn't be exactly the same, but it could be somewhat similar if we didn't share, hey, that was a terrible time. So I think from my perspective, that might be one of the motivating factors, but it's also very important. But I am curious from your perspective, if we frame it up that way, what do you think is vital that younger generations get from it, or should be getting from this and hearing these histories now?
When October 7th happened, I have a good friend down here, and she said, nobody's going to be interested in your book because we're all watching the news and seeing what's going on and reading about it. Ukraine, also the Gaza war. But in the end, what happened 60, 80, 100 years ago, it's the same thing. The song remains the same. And people need to realize that. It could be a bad neighbor, a bad business deal, a bad federal government, local government, foreign government, a natural disaster. You could find yourself on the run, homeless, not knowing where your next meal is, not having a job, and not knowing where you're going to sleep that night, that kind of thing.
There's so much to talk about. We could create a podcast just around this and continue to talk about it. It's an important topic. It framed up your life where you're at now. And I think hopefully through your efforts that it can inspire or frame up somebody else's story. And that was going to be one of my other questions is, for those that are listening that are inspired by either the book or just the fact that you did this and are carrying this out, there does tend to be this creative side to physicians, by the way. We talked with one several shows ago. He wanted to go and do stand-up comedy, just to do this creative outlet, to have this other side to be explored. And so I'm not surprised that you're a stand-up comic. Is that what you're saying?
No, I try to be a wise guy sometimes, but it's funny. That'd be a fun way to retire. That would be a fun thing to do, though. But
Chris and I don't know anything about that, right? It's serious talk all the time.
We say overly serious.
Play piano, play keyboards for a local rock band would be a blast. And I think, I've forgotten most of the skills, but I can pick it back up. But you're right. Be creative. Yeah. Some people generalize that doctors aren't good writers, but I disagree. There's thousands and thousands of doctors out there. Yeah. So they
could run across somebody who's got a great co-author like you do, and help.
I was lucky.
What advice could you share with somebody who maybe also has a story? Maybe somebody else has something they'd like to share, or a story that's similar of tragedy and triumph. What would they need to do to walk that out?
Like the Nike, what is the Nike logo? Just do it. Just sit down and do it. I mean, that's the thing. Maybe I procrastinated, and I've been known to procrastinate, but lately not so much because things pile up on you. So start writing it down, a couple words a day. If you've got a book, everybody has a book in them, and if you don't want to write necessarily a biography, write a play, write an opera, write a musical, do something different. Or like I said, pick up an instrument, go to the music, travel. You don't have to be creative. You can do things to educate yourself. You can do things to stimulate the mind, and of course, exercise, eat the right foods, this and that and that. You can write about medicine too, by the way, your specialty, your experiences. That can help a lot of people. And I have a plan to do something like that. I don't want to give away that title, but I do have a plan on doing something like that where I'm educating the kids, but make a book that would be interesting to non-medical students, to people that aren't necessarily pre-med. So it'd be part humor, part advice, part experiences, part autobiography. And that's been in my head for years, and I just haven't been able to get it on paper because I've been so busy. And I've got 2 other books in the back of my head. But even if I wrote all 4 books in whatever time I have left here on beautiful Mother Earth, I think this book would be by far the most important one that I will have done. So it may not be the most popular, but I hope someday it is because it's too important a subject. But yeah, there's a lot of avenues. And if you have burnout, quit. Do something else. Go get your MBA. A lot of doctors get their MBA, do a podcast if you want to host a podcast. I've had some great physicians host me, one from New Zealand, one from Tennessee, a neurologist. They're really cool guys. Or be a podcast guest, anything. But have fun, enjoy life. It's short. It's really our only commodity. I mean, we talk about stocks and bonds, real estate, crypto, but time is, in the end, is really our only commodity. Use it wisely.
Well, it's the only thing that we lose more of every day, and it gains more value.
No doubt about it. So when I got into medical school and graduated and got my first job, I was so thrilled. I'm a doctor now. I'm on my own. I'm kicking butt. But maybe it wasn't enough. And so maybe that's what I felt the last few years, that do something a little bit different, do something. And this is my way of giving back to the community, the Jewish community and otherwise, because it is important. One of my best friends from college, Muslim guy, who was my roommate and my fraternity brother he was just a great guy. We stayed friends forever. He lives in Arizona. And one of my best friends from ninth grade is a Greek Orthodox priest in the same area near Phoenix. So the priest, I was going to visit my friend and with some other college buddies, and I mentioned it to my friend who's the priest. So I end up getting a book presentation, and Saki, my Muslim friend, is my assistant. So here we are, a Jewish guy and a Muslim guy doing a talk about the book in front of a congregation that's Greek Orthodox. I would love to do more of those, enlighten the Christian community as well as the Jewish community. It's just too important. And we sold out the books. A lot of kids there, which I loved. A high school kid read the book like immediately, and 2 days later wrote this amazing review. And I could, like I said, I could do that every day, whether it's the Holocaust Museum or the classroom, churches, synagogues. And believe me, I'm trying. It's not like radiology. You go home and you've got a finite amount of work. This is an infinite process. This is, until I reach 7 billion people, or we'll call it 6.8 billion if we'll subtract out the 10 million haters or the 20 million haters out there, whatever the numbers might be. It's a big number though, right? I mean, that's a big number. I mean, it's come up. If only 1% of a certain population, because there's a 1.3 billion Christians, Buddhists, Muslim, what am I missing? Hindu. That's 2/3 of the population, more than 2/3. There's only 16, 17 million Jews on the planet. So I wouldn't want to call us an endangered species, and I hope I never have to, because at least we're spread all over the world, and at least by education, we can avert the same kind of situation that my parents had to go through. Just going through what my dad did, I don't know how I could handle it. I don't know if I could be as strong as he was, for sure.
And just carry on like life was normal now.
Yeah, that's what he did. I mean, all he wanted to do was be free and be a doctor, and he finally got all that. And just like I said, he would have worked till the day he died if he could. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and by the way, he survived 2 open heart surgeries here in the U.S. at the Cleveland Clinic, if you can believe that. And he had a spine injury here in the U.S., if you can believe that. And we don't talk much about pestilence in these podcasts, but there was a lot of it. My dad had to endure, food poisoning, foot infection, lice, body lice more than once. Of course, starvation and all the manifestations of starvation, a bad back, getting beaten, living in squalid condition. The psychology of it all has got to be very, very heavy. So, and then we also don't talk about pets much. When I thought about pets when I revisited the movie Schindler's List, and It's a Beautiful Life, I think it's called. It's about the Holocaust in Italy. It's a wonderful story, except the end, the poor father dies. There's one cat in the whole movie, and it's scrounging around in the luggage, if I remember right. But in Schindler's List, at the turning point of that movie is when he's on the horse with his date, and they're looking down in the ghetto, and all this gunfire is going off randomly in the buildings, and it profoundly affects him. You can see Liam Nielsen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, does a great job in that movie. And I'm wondering how many of those bullets went through pets, because we don't hear about pets on trains. We don't hear about pets at Auschwitz. So who knows how they were persecuted and tortured. Maybe they put them out of their misery right away. But, I love animals too, and that's unthinkable too. Never mind babies and the elderly and the disabled. So a lot of side topics. And how about women in forced labor camps? The Hungarian women were conscripted to forced labor camps, where this recently was exposed to me during my journey, which is, it's not the happiest journey, but I'm a happy guy, and I don't have to be doing this. I do have other interests. But meeting people that are doing the same kind of thing. One, he's turning black and white photos into color, and he's doing a great job. He's from England, and we support each other big time. But he was talking about gangrene, There was a movie about women getting gangrene, which is, now we have antibiotics for it, but back then, no such thing. And these were forced labor camps. And of course, there was forced labor in Auschwitz and all the other concentration camps for people that were useful children, younger people. And my dad, being young and useful, got him to a forced labor camp, which actually probably he survived because of that. Because if he wasn't, he would have passed away. And not a lot of people know about death marches and forced labor camps, including in Hungary, where there was only about a 5% survival rate. And most of the people that were conscripted into forced labor were sent to POW camps. They were treated as prisoners of war, even though they were unarmed throughout the Holocaust and even shot at by Russian planes, on and on, which there's some stories with that are very sad as well. But my dad was lucky that he was useful that way and young. He got to go see his parents once around Christmas time, and then unfortunately never saw them again. And not getting any news until months after he returned after the war. And that's another miracle in itself, how he found out about their whereabouts and their fate.
So much depth to everything you're sharing. And it sounds like even when you're on the road and trying to share your story, that you're picking up and learning even more, and other stories that you had no idea about. You're having to learn those. And I'm just sitting here thinking about all the different stories that we could go on and discuss that are just unbelievable, really. Just the one or this one or that part of it. It doesn't even have to be the whole story, which when you put it all together, it's too much. But I really respect and appreciate the time that you've put in today, but also sharing your story with our audience and, with the world as you are making your way around. Last question I have for you is summing up the title of the show that we have, The Patient Physician. And our question is always, what does that mean to you when you hear the patient physician?
Well, I'm not one, because since I'm retired, and I actually had a real serious illness last year that I'm so happy to recover from. And I'm on the wrong end of the needle now, as I say, and I'm on the wrong end of the insurance documents. But I understand what it is to be a patient. I've had to wait an hour for the guy that actually saved my life, so I didn't mind. The cardiologist that saved my life, I can wait in his office all day if I have to, because I know he's busy and he's helping save other people's lives. As a radiologist, you tend to forget that the x-rays you're reading, the CAT scan you're reading is a patient. It's an actual person. So we used to say, oh, great case or interesting case. But a person is suffering with that. And so you have to keep that in perspective. We need to be patient as physicians in our path, in our education, and learning what we're learning, and learning to be good at what we're doing, and learning by experience. So that's another type of patience. In one of my radiology offices back in Flint, Michigan, we had a little sign that said, if you're waiting more than 15 minutes, ring this bell. And so we had a pretty good throughput in that office. We tried to take care of patients and realize that they have their day, they have work and kids and other things, and especially in the winter, having to commute to the office in crappy weather, that kind of thing. So, yeah, but it's a great title for a podcast that I would never think of. But now I'm a physician and a patient. And and my best thing about radiology was doing the procedures on people like upper GIs and barium enemas and telling the patient, it looks pretty good, or you got a hiatal hernia, but they can treat it. Or at night, once I did an abscess drainage in a guy's pelvis, it was huge, and the guy was suffering. He had fever and the night sweats, and we stick a needle in, and we drain out all the pus. And believe me, pus doesn't smell good. If you've ever, you know what I'm talking about. It's disgusting. But it's the best smell you're ever going to
almost smell it now.
It's the best smell when you're sucking out all this an abscess, and the guy says to you, "Oh my God, I feel so much better immediately." Mm-hmm. That is so gratifying. And this poor guy was probably suffering for weeks with this thing, and that kind of thing. Once I had an Achilles tendon rupture, and I'm hopping along with crutches and on one foot. It's a Friday night in Massachusetts. I'm in the CT scanner. It's late. It's 7:30. Nobody's around except the nurse and the CT tech. I'm sweating because it's muggy, and I got the stupid cast. And I do a double drainage. The person had gallbladder disease, so they had a biloma, which is a fluid collection of bile that escaped from the biliary system because it gets so backed up, and a nearby abscess. So I did a double drainage. It took me an hour, sweating, hopping on one foot with a ruptured Achilles tendon. So very gratifying that I could help this person, even in my own minor distress. Because these people could have died in a day or two from these processes. So that's patience. I mean, and waiting for a case late in the afternoon or at night. I'm ready to go home. I'm done with my work, but I'm waiting for the ambulance to bring the patient over so we can scan them so we can be done. So another form of patience. But patience is a virtue. I hate to be cliche, but it's true. And it's something that needs to be learned. And it is part of the job. And when you're working hard, it's hard. When you have a tough schedule, it's hard to be patient. There's no doubt about it. No matter what you're doing, MBA, lawyer, doctor, an actor, you've got to be patient, no doubt. And I think with patience comes success.
Dr. Robert Wolf, thank you so much for your time and insight, and wish you nothing but the best of success on your continued journey and sharing your story and your parents' story. And I hope that you also not only continue to get that response that you've had where people are sharing, but also provide some light and wisdom in those people's lives.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. Again, it was an honor. I can't thank Chris enough for helping set this up, and Johanna, of course. It was a real delight.
Thanks for being on. We appreciate it.
This conversation was brought to you by Physicians Resource Services, a firm supporting medical professionals to improve their financial situation and pursue their personal and professional goals. The Patient Physician is produced in Austin, Texas. Editing and sound design are in the hands of the PodConnects podcast network. Please email questions or show ideas to info@physiciansrs.com.